So hi, yes, my name's Mick. I'm a composer, songwriter, and musician, and I'm absolutely delighted to be in Dundee because I was actually born here and grew up here, but I spent more time in Glasgow, boo, than Dundee. But go to Dundee. It's amazing to see how much Dundee how much it's changed, over the last. God, I don't even want to count the number of years, but here are some of the projects that I've worked on as composer. So I'm actually pretty new to the games industry, having only really started in February last year with the Global Game Jam. Over the last 10 years, I've mostly been working in animation, so working on Sesame Street cartoons and things like that. But being new to an industry is not new to me. I've worked in several different industries over the years, music, animation, TV, and theatre. The title of my talk today is Get Out of the Office and Into the Springtime. This being a lyric from the song that got my band, Belle and Sebastian, on Top of the Pops for the first time in the year 2000. Now, if you're wondering what being on Top of the Pops is like, it was every bit as fun and bewildering as you can imagine. So we were miming to a room full of teeny boppers, basically, who didn't have a clue who we were, but they were being made to dance anyway. Between the rehearsal and the recording, we decided to go exploring. Now, at this time, Top of the Pops was filmed at the same place as EastEnders. So some of the band found the set, and they broke onto the set of EastEnders. So they wandered into the Queen Vic, nicked some beer mats, and someone took a piss in the middle of Albert Square. I don't know where I was at this moment, but I wasn't there. Your Honour. Their fun was curtailed by a security guard who duly rounded them up and locked them in a cupboard and phoned for the police. It looked like their fate was sealed until to the rescue came Jamie Theakston. Now, some of you may be too young to remember Jamie Theakston, but this guy was never off the telly. He was always on the telly. So anyway, thanks to Jamie, the band got off with it. We're able to go ahead and mime our song. Then straight after, we headed off to the Top of the Pops bar. Yes, there was a Top of the Pops bar, where we got pissed with Chrissy Hind from the Pretenders. And we ended up in the corner of the room singing the backing track to a song that was performed that night by a female singer who at the time I'd never heard of, but actually in researching for this talk last week, I figured out it was actually Sia. This was back in 2000. Now she's since become a sort of #1 global sensation, and she wrote the Rihanna song Diamonds and sang Titanium with David Guetta and stuff. But at the time we didn't know who she was. She was actually at number 10. We were at number 15, so she was doing better than us at the time. But she's gone on to bigger and better things. But the question I often asked myself at the time, and even now, is how did I end up there on Top of the Pops doing all this mad shit? To answer that, we need to go back to 1994. So this was what happening in 1994. There was a new show called Friends on telly. You might have heard of it. A couple of bands called Blur and Oasis were battling for the top of the charts. And who was in charge of the country? It was the Tories. This guy, John Major. So some things don't change. But I was in my final year at Glasgow Uni, and I just stopped playing the trumpet. The reason being that I'd failed the audition for the university orchestra earlier that year, and so I was feeling pretty demoralised about music in general. But my brother was playing drums in a university play called I Can Smell Licorice, and he felt they needed a better trumpet player in the band than the one who's already in the band. So he started nagging me to come along to rehearsals. And I was like, no, I can't play. I kept resisting, but eventually I relented. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And I thought a little more of it until about a year later, a guy approached me in the Grosvenor Calf in Glasgow and said, "You play the trumpet. I saw you play in a university play last year. Do you want to play on some recordings that I'm making?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." And turned out this guy was Stuart Murdoch, and the recording that he asked me to play on was Dog on Wheels, which was the first recording by fledgling Belle Sebastian. And I ended up playing on the first album, Tiger Milk, as a session musician, and was asked to join the band in 1998. And I was with the band for the next 15 years. So definitely do get out of the office and go and do things, because things would have turned out pretty differently for me if I'd not agreed to play trumpet in that play. Now, I know what you're thinking. It sounds like, from all of this, that I spend a lot of time reminiscing on the past glories and stuff, but really I don't, or I try not to. As I mentioned earlier, I've worked in a few different industries. I started out studying pharmacology, but I've never worked in a lab. Music's what I've done for the last 25 years. But I'm actually in the process of starting a new career in tech. I've signed up for a 16-week software development bootcamp, and I'm excited about the possibilities. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the things that I've learned about joining a new industry. And these are things I'm keen to remind myself of when hopefully entering a new industry. So I learned a lot about this when I wrote a musical comedy with a couple of friends and had absolutely no idea what to do with it. The musical was called Cannibal Woman of Mars. So what happened was, me and a couple of friends had started writing this musical, and we'd written about 4 songs or something. And around about that time, I had a meeting with someone at the BBC at Pacific Key about potentially writing music for kids' TV. Now, she didn't have anything for me on that front, but she said, well, what else have you been up to? And I mentioned that I was writing a musical comedy about cannibals, to which she replied, well, I'm really good friends with the director of the National Theatre of Scotland. Do you want to set up a meeting with her? And I was like, I've never heard of the National Theatre of Scotland, but yeah, fine, sure. Tell people what you're up to, because useful connections can come from random places. And also, a recommendation from a friend is one of the strongest introductions that you can have, so be friendly. And this turned out to be the case because it was a good meeting. And at the end of it, the National Theatre offered us a development period, which involved being put together with a dramaturg, which I didn't. I had no idea what that was. Don't be afraid to ask questions, like, what's a dramaturg? Turns out it's somebody who helps you with your story arc. What's a story arc? The National Theatre development period ended in 2 days with a cast and director reading and singing through the musical, which was very useful. And at the end of it, the National Theatre told us they had no idea what to do with this play. Piss off, good luck. So we were like, well, what to do next? So I just set up lots of meetings with lots of theatre people, and people were very generous with their time. Be prepared to speak to lots of people, find out how the industry works. And when asking advice from these people, they were all successful within the Scottish theatre industry. I found that everyone gave wildly varying advice. So I decided to take all the advice and average it, which seemed to work out quite well. It seemed that everyone was pointing me in the direction of the Tron Theatre in Glasgow. So I sent them an email and we set up a meeting, and after months of toing and froing, they agreed to put on the show for 2 weeks in their summer comedy season. Oops. Some kind of slowness going on here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's some pictures from the musical comedy. In summary, that's a bushel, which was news to me. I always thought it was a bush. That's a light. Don't hide that under that. That's me. That's my own trumpet. Do blow that. And finally, do this.
Get out of the city and into the sunshine. Get out of the office and into the springtime. Get out of the city and into the sunshine. Get out of the office and into the springtime. Get out of the city and into the sunshine. Get out of the office and into the springtime. Get out of the city and into the sunshine. Get out of the office and into the springtime.
Formed in an all-night cafe in Glasgow, that is Belle and Sebastian. Next up a tune.
If anyone plays a guitar, by the way, I've got some plectrums here at the bottom of this end of the stage. Just help yourself. Thanks very much. Cheers.